He whispers, "I love you," and her husband steps out of my closet. There's a stillness so precise it nearly hums. Mark's voice cracks like frost under boots when he realizes the second breath in the room isn't mine. I don't blink. I watch from the hallway wine glass steady the soft pink rosé swirling lazily like I'm at a vineyard tasting not 10 feet from adultery's center stage. Daniel doesn't say a word either. He doesn't have to. His eyes are locked on Chloe barefoot and dripping sweat onto my bedroom rug, a rug I bought in Santa Fe from an elderly woman who said it was woven for storms. Mark turns boxers hanging like a joke. His face collapses, tries to form apology, then pivot to anger, then to confusion. None of them land. Daniel steps forward, his flashlight still clipped to his jeans from the excuse he gave earlier checking the AC return. The bulb bobs with every step. Chloe squeaks. She actually squeaks. She tries to cover herself with the nearest thing a silk throw from the edge of my bed, but it's too small to hide her shame. She looks at me, and I tilt my head just a fraction. I want her to feel every inch of my floor beneath her. I want her to remember she once called this place Dana's Pinterest dream house. She didn't know then it was also Dana's weapon. The villa wasn't always mine. Technically, but I fixed that years ago when I paid off the last lien before Mark ever laid claim to the guest wing he liked to call his studio. He never painted a thing. Just adjusted lights, took calls, played man of the mountain while I managed bookings and designed wine pairings. The villa was my retirement plan. It became his playground. Until I took it back. Chloe's eyes dart to Daniel's. There's a tiny twitch in her left cheek, a tremor of recognition. She realizes this wasn't an ambush of convenience. It was designed. Daniel glances at me once, just a flick asking if it's time. I sip instead. Let it cook. The room reeks of citrus oil sweat and the last gasp of denial. Mark opens his mouth, and for once I get to watch the man improvise without a script. He's used to leading conference calls to charming mid-tier executives and bored bank managers. He doesn't know what to do in a room where he's not in control. Chloe clutches the throw tighter, then stumbles to speak. "Dana!" "I didn't know." I lift my hand. Not a dramatic gesture. Just a bartender's hush. And I'm good at that. 1,000 tastings, 100 guests, and I've never spilled wine on white linen. "Don't lie in my sheets," I say, voice low. Or in my face. Daniel shifts, leans against the dresser, arms crossed. He doesn't need to say anything. His presence is enough. Chloe whispers, "Daniel, please," but the please sounds more like panic than guilt. There's no fire alarm going off. No dramatic music. Just the sound of sweat dripping onto reclaimed hardwood. Mark starts to step toward me. I let him. I want to see what he thinks is about to happen. He stops when I raise the wine bottle, not in threat, just in precision. "This is a 2016 Mourvedre," I murmur. "Pairs beautifully with lies." He laughs. Actually laughs. "Dana, this is insane." He gestures to the room, to our room. "You brought him here." "What the hell is this?" I nod toward the closet. "The same place you brought her. Seems fair." The truth doesn't need volume. Just a good angle. Mark's face morphs again, confusion curdling into anger. "You planned this?" I set the bottle down on the dresser with a soft clink. "No, darling. I designed this." Chloe looks like she wants to disappear. Daniel doesn't move. Mark's breath catches. Wait. You're filming this?" I glance at Daniel. "Not tonight." He clears his throat. "That was last weekend." Mark blinks. The realization lands. You knew I tilt my head before you even forgot to clear the booking notification. Chloe lets out a sob. She set us up. Daniel's jaw tightens. You set yourselves up. The hallway is still. Outside, a single cicada begins its dry electric hum. I step into the room now fully, and they both back away like I'm holding a blade instead of a Bordeaux. I'm not angry. Not exactly. I've been past anger for weeks. This is choreography, Chloe whimpers. Please, this isn't what it looks like. I raise a brow. Then what is it? A workshop? A retreat? Mark mutters something too low to hear. I lean closer. Speak up, sweetheart. Don't make me quote the deed again. His head jerks up. What deed? I smile. Let it sit. Let them connect the dots. Daniel opens the closet door wider, revealing a suitcase Mark's. Not packed for business. Packed for indulgence. His signature sunglasses, the ones I gifted him in Barcelona, sit on top. Beneath that, Chloe's toiletries bag. Matching. Coordinated. Unapologetic. Mark lunges for it. Daniel steps forward. Don't. One word. All it takes. Mark hesitates. His power, the illusion of it drains with every second. He glances at Chloe, but she's looking at the rug again, at the stain she left. The villa is quiet now, save for our breaths and the low buzz of heat pressing against the glass. I walk to the bed, lift the silk throw, and fold it once, then again. I hand it to Chloe. She takes it like a court summons. Mark opens his mouth again, then shuts it. Daniel checks his watch. We done. I nod. We're done for tonight. He steps out first. Chloe follows her back, bare her pride gone. Mark hesitates. Dana? I shake my head. Don't waste that word. I pick up my glass. Still cold. Still perfect. I watch him go. I watch them all go. The room smells different now, like endings. The door clicks behind them, but I don't lock it. Not yet. I'm Dana, 44, a private chef from Sedona, Arizona. I built my villa from the bones of my first marriage, 2 wine licenses, and one very expensive mistake with a vineyard that never opened. The house isn't big, but it curves with the land stucco walls, wrap-around porch-arched windows that catch the light just before sunset like someone striking a match against glass. I knew what I was doing when I designed it. Mark didn't move in so much as he appeared like something invited casually and left permanently. Back then I didn't mind. He made me laugh. He said things like, "Why build an empire if there's no one to toast with at the top? That line worked the first time. Maybe the second. But after a while, it became something else. Like a man practicing in a mirror. He started coming up on weekends claiming he needed quiet to work on business deals. He said the city drained him. Said I was lucky to have escape. I believed him mostly. Or maybe I didn't, but I liked pretending I did. It's amazing how long you'll ignore certain things if they come with a kiss and a bottle of decent Syrah. But the truth has a pulse. It waits. And when it wants to be heard, it speaks. It started with little things. Mark changed his cologne, switched from the deep cedar I liked to something floral lighter, too clean. He stopped doing the small things he used to fake well, offering to light candles when guests came refilling the fridge, asking if I wanted a second glass. That last one stuck with me, because Mark never forgot the wine. I remember one Sunday I'd come back early from a pop-up event in Flagstaff. I hadn't told him wanted to surprise him. The guest wing door was locked. I knocked. No answer. I walked around back, thinking maybe he was meditating again. He was on a self-optimization kick back then, called it mental quarterly planning. But his car was gone. I looked inside the window anyway. The bed was unmade. There were 2 wine glasses on the floor. My glasses. The ones I reserve for Bordeaux only. They hadn't been rinsed. One had lipstick on the rim. Not mine. I didn't say anything. Not then. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself some club soda, and stared at the empty space above the stove where he promised he'd hang a framed photo of the vineyard we toured in Paso Robles. He never did. I think part of me started preparing that day, not planning, just collecting, emotionally inventorying every corner of that villa, noticing what I'd bought, what I'd painted, what I'd built with my hands, and what he touched but never made his. And somewhere in that catalog, I began to calculate. Not revenge, just readiness. I didn't ask questions, not the next weekend or the one after, but I watched. I noticed he started calling me less when he arrived. He used to text "here," locking in. Now he'd show up 2 hours after check-in and claim traffic. The scent of citrus oil lingered longer. The guest towels needed rewashing more often. And then there was the booking notification. It was subtle. The system I use auto sends a confirmation email whenever a stay is registered through my villa's online calendar, even internal entries. Most of the time, it's a glitch, nothing to worry about. But this one came through with a note, guest names Mark plus C. Mendez. At first, I thought maybe he'd booked it for a friend, but I knew the name. Chloe Mendez. We'd met once. A yoga instructor with too many bracelets and a voice like wet velvet. She'd come to one of Mark's parties in Scottsdale last year, introduced as a wellness coach. She wore white linen like it was armor. I didn't like her. She smiled with her mouth, not her eyes. I deleted the email, but I didn't forget it. Instead, I checked the paper records. I keep everything. Call it over-organization, or call it knowing better after your first husband drains your accounts under a pseudonym and 3 Vegas trips. I found the booking confirmation tucked between last fall's receipts. It had his name, her initial, and a check-in time that matched the weekend I was at my cousin's wedding in Santa Barbara. He hadn't mentioned feeling lonely, hadn't said he missed me. I started to feel something shift, then not rage, not grief, just clarity. And with it came a strange calm, like seeing the current of a river under ice. You don't move yet. You wait for the crack. I didn't confront him. I cooked. I filled the fridge. I reset the towels. I played the role he forgot he cast me in. The next time he arrived, he had flowers. Not roses, he never remembered I hated roses. These were wildflowers, dessert ones, local, as if that made up for anything. He kissed me on the cheek like someone cashing in a favor. He said he missed me. I asked how his trip went. He paused. Which one? I smiled. That smile that always scared my sister. The one that meant I already knew the answer. But I let him talk. Let him spiral into excuses I didn't require yet. We had dinner. We had wine. He passed out early. I walked the villa twice that night. Once with a glass in hand, once with the lights off. I traced the walls with my fingertips. I thought about every name on every file tied to this house. I thought about power and how it isn't who yells first, it's who speaks last. The next morning, he left before sunrise. Said he had meetings in Phoenix. I didn't ask with whom, just waved from the porch. The groundskeeper Julio arrived minutes later. He nodded at me, surprised. "Didn't expect you back so soon," he said. "Thought it was your husband's turn." I raised an eyebrow. "Turn." He shrugged. "He's been here a lot lately. Same lady with him. Blonde. Sometimes barefoot." He gestured toward the back balcony. "That one." I followed his hand. My bedroom window. My linens. My life. I thanked Julio, told him to trim the east hedges today. He nodded, returned to his clippers. I went inside, poured myself another club soda, and stared again at the space above the stove. Still no frame. Still no photo. Still no vineyard. The ice clinked against glass. I didn't feel sick. I didn't cry. I just stood there, hand steady. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to argue with ghosts. I was going to open the doors and let them see me watching. I didn't stop loving Mark that day. I just stopped lying for him. For him. The calendar ping came at 6:14 a.m., which was strange because Mark never booked anything before 9. I was in bed awake, but still the sun not yet reaching the clay-colored blinds. The subject line read, "Villa stay confirmed, Mark plus C. Mendez." At first, I thought it was an old reservation triggering late. But the timestamp was new, processed at 5:51 a.m., initiated from the owner portal. My portal. The one Mark didn't have access to. I read it 3 times, scrolling down to see the stay details, 2 nights guest wing, same dates as my trip to Albuquerque for the seasonal food fair. It was too precise, too convenient. I clicked the footer. Whoever had booked it used a secondary device ID that matched Mark's old laptop. I'd let him borrow it 6 months ago when his had a fan issue. Apparently he'd never logged out. And apparently Chloe was now C. Mendez in more than just the casual sense. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. I simply lay there and stared at the ceiling at the wood beam I'd begged the builder to leave exposed, even though it cost extra. Mark said it was pointless. I said it gave the room texture. He told me once he didn't care about texture, just functionality. But texture is what makes you notice something's wrong. It's the bump in a seamless lie. I got up, opened the filing cabinet in my study, and pulled out the master villa ledger. It was a thick spiral book cream pages with lined columns, dates, guest names, check-ins, invoices. I flipped to the week of my trip. There it was, manual entry made from the guest console in the studio wing. He'd logged it as couples retreat. I took a pencil and wrote next to it in the margin, "Retreat from what I didn't erase it." I let my own handwriting become the margin note in his deception. That afternoon, Mark texted, "Heading up early, roads are clear." I replied with a thumbs up emoji. I never use emojis. I let that be the first test. He didn't comment, didn't notice. That told me more than any security camera ever could. When I arrived back 2 days later, the sheets in the guest wing were clean, but the smell was wrong. It smelled like lavender body oil, not the bergamot I stocked. The trash had been emptied, the wine glasses were gone, but the calendar was not. I printed the confirmation, folded it once, and tucked it into a new folder labeled Quiet Files. Then I rewashed every glass. I looked at the booking history online and scrolled back 90 days. The same name, Mark plus C. Mendez, had appeared 4 times, different dates, different wings. The pattern wasn't just indulgence. It was repetition. He wasn't hiding it from the world. Just from me. And maybe not even that. Maybe he thought I wouldn't look. That's the thing about men like Mark. They confuse silence with stupidity. They think stillness is ignorance. But sometimes stillness is strategy. A week later, he brought Chloe to a dinner party in Scottsdale. Introduced her as a colleague in a wellness brand incubator. She wore the same linen dress, same smug smile. When she hugged me, I felt her cheek brush mine like she was sampling my temperature. She smelled like my sheets. The same laundry blend, the same damn pillow mist. I didn't flinch. I just returned the hug and whispered, "You look rested." She pulled back, smiled too wide. "The mountains are healing." Mark beamed beside her like they were the ones throwing the party. "They weren't. I was." And I took note of the way he poured her wine first, how he forgot my glass. That night when they left, I walked through the living room and noticed a bracelet under the sofa, hers probably, a cheap silver thing with beads shaped like moons. I put it in a drawer. That same drawer now holds 4 other artifacts, a pair of Chloe's earrings, a cork with a lipstick print, a paper napkin with her name scrawled next to a heart, and a note that simply reads, "Lock the balcony, she's back Sunday." Each item cataloged, stored not for vengeance, but for verification. I'm not someone who rushes. I braise. I marinate. I let the facts soften before serving them cold. 2 weeks after that, Mark had the audacity to suggest we open the villa for shared access. Said we could turn it into a co-managed property. Said it just makes sense with how much time I spend there. I told him I'd think about it. He smiled like he'd already won. That's the smile I wanted to break. And I knew exactly how. That night I went to the cellar not for wine, but for the deed. The physical one, not the digital copy. I'd kept it in a black folder behind old inventory sheets and an envelope of signed tastings. I pulled it out, checked the seal, checked the name Dana Renee Collins. No co-owner, no mark. Filed with the recorder's office, signed March 11th, 2018. Recorded under Book 203, page 14. I held it like a mirror. This house was mine. And he didn't know I knew. That was the leverage. The reverse tilt. I closed the folder and walked it back up the stairs, slid it into the quiet files cabinet, and poured myself a whiskey instead of wine. Whiskey burns, but it wakes you up. The next day I called Daniel. We hadn't spoken in years, not since the neighborhood block party where Chloe got too drunk and Daniel had to carry her home. He didn't ask why I called, just said, what time I told him Sunday. Noon. Bring tools. Tell Mark you're here to fix the outdoor lock. His voice didn't waver. Got it. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the stove hood. My face looked unfamiliar, harder maybe, or just more awake. I didn't make a plan that day. I made a decision, and the villa decided with me. Julio was already there when I pulled into the gravel drive, his old truck humming under the shade of the pecan tree, his elbow out the window like he had all the time in the world. I nodded at him, stepping out in flats and sunglasses, even though the clouds were thick that morning. He climbed down slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. Didn't expect you back so soon, he said, voice easy, unaware he was about to become part of a performance. Thought it was your husband's turn. I let that hang between us, brushing imaginary dust from my sleeve. His turn. Julio shrugged, gesturing toward the back of the house. Yeah, he's been around a lot lately, sometimes with a guest. A woman I asked like it wasn't already carved into my spine. Blonde. Walks around barefoot. Doesn't talk to anyone. Same car each time. I turned my head slightly just enough for the wind to catch my hair and lift it like a curtain. Did you see her last weekend? He nodded. Friday. Came in while I was trimming the hedges. She waved like she owned the place. He didn't mean it as anything more than a note, an observation, but it struck like a spark against gasoline. I smiled. Thanks for keeping the grounds clean. Julio nodded again, slower this time. You want me to do the courtyard today? Yes, I said. Make sure the cameras are clear of dust. I didn't have to remind him which ones. The dome cams tucked under the eaves had always been a bit theatrical. Mark hated them, said they made guests feel surveilled. I said they made them feel safe. Chloe clearly didn't care either way. As I walked toward the house, I heard Julio whistle the kind of low, absent-minded tune that comes from someone who's seen enough to know not to ask more. Inside the villa smelled like grapefruit cleaner and lemon oil, too sharp, too scrubbed. That was Mark's way of erasing things. He never left evidence. He left absence. And I'd learned how to read silence. I moved through the room slowly, letting my fingers trail over the cool stone counters, the backs of leather chairs, the silver tray still faintly scented with the kind of perfume that comes in minimalist bottles with 3-digit price tags. I went upstairs and stood in the guest room doorway. The bed was made tighter than I usually left it. The sheets my high thread count set from Italy looked untouched. But on the dresser was a smudge. A faint ring from a coffee mug, or more likely her tea. Chloe was always about tea. Herbal cleansing rose hips and hibiscus, and some blend she claimed helped her sleep. I took a photo of the ring, not because it was useful, but because it was a frame of what they thought was hidden. Downstairs, I unlocked the utility drawer and pulled out the small hard drive where the interior feeds were stored. I fast-forwarded through the week, pausing on Friday night. There she was, slipping through the side door in a wrap dress, barefoot, carrying a yoga mat. Mark followed 10 minutes later, holding a bag of groceries like it was date night. They cooked. They kissed. They used my music playlist. The screen showed her dancing in the kitchen, humming off key to the bossa nova loop I always used when prepping wine pairings. I closed the laptop. I didn't need to watch the rest. The file saved automatically. Time-stamped. Archived. Not for revenge. For truth. I heard a knock. I walked to the front past the iron sculpture Mark insisted was vintage modern, but I always thought looked like a mistake, and opened the door. Julio stood there rubbing the back of his neck. You might want to check the side cameras too, he said. One of the neighbors misses. Bellows said she saw some guy sneaking in last weekend. I narrowed my eyes. Sneaking. Well, he chuckled. I don't think it was sneaking exactly. But he waited until dark, parked by the cactus trail, and walked the back route in. I nodded. Thank you, Julio. Sure thing, ma'am, he said, tipping his cap before walking back to the drive. I watched him for a second, then turned back into the house. Mrs. Bellows. That woman watched everything. She watered her plants twice a day, whether they needed it or not, just for the excuse to be on the porch. If Chloe was coming through the back path, she knew she was being watched. Which meant she didn't care. Which meant Mark had told her something, maybe that I didn't check the security. Maybe that I trusted him blindly. Maybe that the house was ours. I went into the office and opened the quiet files again this time, laying out the deed beside the booking confirmations. Each artifact now had context, a rhythm, a beat in the music of his lies. I added a printed still from the kitchen footage, Chloe reaching for the wine glasses. I didn't have to catch them in the act to convict them in clarity. I pulled out a blank note card and wrote a single sentence. She moved like she belonged here. Then I tucked it under the still pressed the folder shut and slid it back into the cabinet. The next morning I called Daniel again. Sunday, I said. I'll be out by 10. Got it, he replied. No hesitation. What time does she usually arrive? He books her for 2, I said. She shows up at 1:30. I'll be there at noon. "Back door," I said. "Like last time." He paused. "Does it lock from the inside?" "Not anymore." He made a sound, a low, almost laugh, then hung up. That night, I set the guest wing thermostat to 72, her favorite temperature. I replaced the wine in the cellar with cheaper bottles, swapped the sheets for the backup set, same color, slightly scratchier. I left a note on the counter that said, "Help yourself just ambiguous enough to feel genuine." The villa was ready. The scene was set. All I had to do was press record. Sometimes the most public scenes are the ones that look private until you realize who's watching. I found the leather folder while reorganizing the wine cellar, not because I needed to, but because the house felt too quiet, and I needed a reason to make the silence move. It was wedged behind a box of Syrah I'd been meaning to uncork for 2 seasons, tucked like a secret only my past self trusted me to remember. The folder was smooth-aged, no label on the spine, just the kind of subtle luxury Mark used to pretend to understand. I pulled it out, brushing off a film of dust, and opened it on the cellar table. Inside was the original villa file, printed on thick cream stock, not the thin municipal paper most people keep. The deed was clipped to the first page, the official recorder's office stamp, still clean book 203, page 14. Filed 03-11-18. I read the name slowly, even though I already knew what it would say. Dana Renee Collins, sole owner, no secondary signatory, no marital joint ownership clause. I flipped to the back confirming the address Blue Mesa Villa Parcel 149C under my trust. There was no Mark Collins anywhere in those pages, not even as a contact. I let my fingers rest there, the tips pressing gently against my name like I was confirming that I still existed in ink. The walls of the cellar were cool, the silence layered with the scent of cedar planks and cork. I thought of every time Mark had introduced guests at dinners by saying our home, every joke he made about his side of the villa, every time he nodded proudly as Chloe gushed about his design sense in the guest wing. They wore my house like a borrowed coat, and never once thought to check the tag. I closed the folder slowly, like sealing a vault. That was the moment the game changed. I hadn't been angry, not really, not until then. But now I saw it for what it was, not just betrayal, but delusion. And I was done being polite with liars who couldn't even steal properly. Upstairs, the guest wing door was cracked. I stepped in and looked around like a stranger, like someone appraising a rental. The bed was made again, but the throw pillows were misaligned. Mark never noticed those. Chloe must have fixed them trying to erase herself, but she missed the order. I reached under the bed, knowing exactly what I'd find the wine rack Mark had insisted on keeping just for us. 3 bottles, all empty. He'd reused my labels, the ones I designed for a private event series. I smiled. He'd even gotten the vintage wrong. I took one, held it to the light. A 2015 Merlot, labeled as 2013. A lie printed on a lie. That was Mark in glass form. Back in the main wing, I started pulling documents. I didn't need all of them, but I wanted layers. Date trails, legal filings, insurance docs. I compiled them into a clean binder and labeled it for Mark if he asks. He wouldn't, of course. That was the point. But it felt good knowing it would exist. I printed out the latest utility bill, 2 electric water trash, all in my name. He'd offered to split expenses once, said he wanted to contribute. He Venmo'd me $200 and called it partnership. I didn't cash it, still haven't. I printed the invoice, added it to the binder. That night, I lit every candle in the living room, opened the patio doors, and sat with a notebook on my lap, sketching out the guest wing layout. Not because I needed to change it, but because I wanted to remind myself who built this place. Every square foot, every tile. I chose the matte black kitchen fixtures when Mark said gold was trendier. I paid extra to run the stone flooring seamlessly through the master bath. I fought the contractor to preserve the original window arches, even though it delayed everything 3 weeks. This wasn't just a house. It was my memory in material form, and he had turned it into a stage set for someone else's affair. The next morning, I emailed my lawyer a question phrased innocently enough. If a property is owned solely by one spouse and the other uses it for non-consensual purposes, what protections exist for the owner? The reply came within hours. If the property is deeded under sole ownership and no legal marital property clause exists, the owner maintains full rights of control and revocation of access. I filed that too. Later that day, Mark called. Heading up Friday, he said. Chloe might swing by for a bit if that's cool. My voice was calm. Of course. You won't be there, right? I'll be out of town, I said, and let the sentence hang unqualified. He chuckled. Perfect. We'll bring up some supplies. Might fix that leaky faucet in the guest bath. Thoughtful, I said. I could practically hear the smug. That night, I placed the leather folder in the center of the guest bed. Not open, just waiting. I added a small note in my own handwriting. If you're going to redecorate, at least know who owns the walls. Then I changed the code to the keyless entry. Not to lock him out yet. Just to make sure I was the only one who knew how to open it again. Sunday morning, I stood on the back patio and looked out over the stone path I'd laid myself one flagstone at a time. I remembered my first night sleeping here alone long before Mark, before even the thought of letting someone else take up space inside these walls. I remembered how proud I felt waking to silence. I took a photo of the path, uploaded it to a private album I'd labeled Proof of Peace, and wrote beneath it, "You don't have to raise your voice to raise the stakes." Then I went inside, closed the patio door, and began setting the final trap. He thought he had the house because he had the girl, but I had the deed, the timeline, and a witness who just happened to carry a toolbox. I stood in front of the mirror with the deed in my hands, reading it out loud like an incantation I needed to memorize. Title filed March 11th, 2018. Book 203, page 14, parcel 149C, sole owner Dana Renee Collins. The words had a rhythm clinical but final, like an old verdict no one ever bothered to challenge. I whispered it again, slower this time. The mirror didn't blink. Neither did I. In the reflection, I didn't look angry, I looked precise. That was the thing I'd forgotten about myself. I didn't just build meals. I built realities. And this one had my name on it in ink, in filing numbers, in legal designations, that no lover, no matter how smooth his voice or confident his affair, could erase. I walked into the kitchen still barefoot, the leather folder tucked under my arm like a gift I was delivering to a liar. The sunlight hit the countertops just right, lighting up the faint outline where Chloe had once set down her tea mug without a coaster. Her fingerprints had faded, but the nerve still stung. I poured myself a glass of water and set it next to the deed, then photographed both side by side the body and the evidence. I texted it to myself, labeling the file, "My house." Confirmed. It was petty. It was perfect. Upstairs, I laid the folder on the bed again, centered this time with the note slightly angled. "You should know where you're trespassing." I didn't expect him to find it immediately. Mark was the kind of man who avoided reading anything he didn't expect to be about him, But I wanted him to feel it eventually, the way you feel a lump under the mattress and know something's wrong even before you lift the sheets. That evening, I left the villa to run errands just long enough for him to arrive early, as he often did when he thought I wasn't around. I waited 2 blocks away, parked under a Palo Verde tree with a line of sight through the neighbor's hedge. At 4:13 p.m., his car pulled up. Chloe was in the passenger seat, sunglasses on, hair tied back like she was auditioning for a life that wasn't hers. They kissed before they got out. Not the passionate kind, the practiced kind. The kind that says, "We've gotten away with it this long." I let them walk inside before I stepped out of the car, stretching like I had no particular place to be. I walked to Julio's gate and knocked once. He came out wiping his hands again, nodding at me. "They inside?" he asked, not needing to clarify who. "Yep," I said. "Let's wait 15. He nodded. We stood in silence. 15 minutes later, I made my way to the side patio and unlocked the gate. I didn't go in, not yet. I just waited by the security box and let the motion detector do its job. The alert pinged my phone. Interior movement master bedroom. Guest voices too. Mark's laugh was unmistakable. I hit record on the ambient audio just to be thorough. I heard her voice next. "You really think she has no idea, Dana?" He scoffed. "She still thinks the villa's in both our names." That was the moment. I opened the app, pulled up the deed photo, and zoomed in on the signature block. My name. No one else's. I tapped save as evidence labeled it Exhibit A, sole ownership. Then I walked inside. They weren't in the kitchen. I could hear water running upstairs. I set the leather folder back on the counter face up and left the audio still running. I walked out the front door like I'd forgotten something and circled the long way around. Julio gave me a thumbs up as I passed. I returned to my car and sat in the heat sweat prickling the base of my neck. I wasn't anxious. I was documenting. That was the difference. At 5:02, a new alert file accessed. Dana R. Collins/deed.pdf opened on local device. My stomach did a strange flip, not nerves, just the cold satisfaction of a trap closing. 30 seconds later, front door opened. At 5:03, Mark stepped outside, phone in hand, eyes scanning the driveway. Chloe was behind him holding the folder. Her face was flushed, lips pursed. She looked like someone who'd been told the script had changed but hadn't memorized the new lines. Mark saw my car parked 2 houses down. He didn't move toward it. He just stood there holding his phone like it might save him. I texted him. Just 1 sentence. Page 14. Read slower this time. He didn't reply. Chloe said something. He ignored her. He looked like a man who had just realized he built a fantasy on sand and someone had finally turned on the wind. I didn't wave. I didn't even blink. I turned the engine and drove off. Not fast, not angry, just gone. Later that night, Daniel texted, "Want me to run the next round?" I replied, "Tomorrow, 11 sharp, bring the video." We were almost ready. The deed was no longer just a document. It was a weapon, and I didn't have to raise my voice to make it lethal. Let him walk through my house like it was his. I'd already carved my name into every wall he ignored. Chloe walked into the kitchen like she belonged there, barefoot again, her toes tracing the grain in the reclaimed oak floors I'd spent a month arguing over with the contractor. She didn't look around. She didn't pause. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd rehearsed it, all the placement of the fruit bowl, the drawer with the corkscrew, the way the second cabinet stuck slightly if you pulled it too fast. She opened the fridge and retrieved a bottle of the mid-range Sauvignon Blanc Mark preferred when trying to impress women without spending too much. I stood by the hallway just out of her line of sight, watching the shape of her movements. They weren't sexy. They were practiced, efficient. She knew which wine glass was mine. She reached for it automatically, rinsed it like she'd done it before, then poured without hesitation. She mimicked me with such eerie precision, it was like watching a shadow steal the gestures of its light. Mark followed a few beats later, trailing behind her like a man who knows the props, but not the plot. He didn't speak at first, just watched her open the patio door and step outside, wine in hand, like she was giving herself a tour of something she already claimed in her mind. I remained silent. The side door was slightly ajar, my vantage perfect. Chloe settled into the patio chair I'd rescued from an antique fair, the one with the cracked leather armrest and the faded blue cushion. She crossed her legs, took a sip, and then this part froze me, tilted her head in the same exact way I always did when hosting tastings. Slightly to the left, chin relaxed. The mirror of a gesture I hadn't taught her. Mark finally spoke. "You like it?" Chloe smiled without turning. "It's perfect. I could live here." He chuckled. "Could." She laughed softly. "Give it time." That line landed like ash on my tongue, not because it was smug, but because it was lazy. She believed him. She believed she was next, that this was already hers, only waiting for the paperwork. And in that moment, I realized something colder than betrayal. She didn't know he hadn't told her the truth. That meant she was standing on the edge of a dream she thought was real, and I was watching her about to fall. It should have made me feel victorious. It didn't. It made me feel like I was witnessing someone repeat my own mistakes in reverse. Chloe began to hum low and rhythmic. A melody I knew. I leaned in. It was from my playlist. The Brazilian track I used at food events, upbeat and untranslatable, the kind you can only hum if you've heard it enough times. I remembered when Mark first complimented that song, said it made the house feel curated. I hadn't played it in weeks. He had. With her. Chloe sipped again, then turned to Mark. "Did she design all this?" Mark paused. "Mostly. I mean, I added a few touches. It's really well done," she said. "It feels intentional." I wrote that word in my head. Intentional. Like ownership. Like authorship. Chloe didn't know how right she was. She walked to the edge of the patio, touching the stucco wall as she passed her fingers trailing over the rough surface. She paused under the arch I'd fought to preserve, looking up at the iron light fixture that buzzed faintly in the heat. "Do you ever think she knows?" she asked almost absently. Mark's voice was lower now. "Knows what about us?" "About me being here." There was a beat of silence. He exhaled. "She's busy. Always working. She's not suspicious." Chloe nodded like she wanted to believe that. "She seems sharp." "She is," Mark said. "But she trusts me." I wanted to step out right then, hand her the deed, show her the footage, narrate every lie he'd poured into her ears like cheap wine. But I didn't. Because I realized something more useful than confrontation. Chloe was exposing Mark without even meaning to. Every word out of her mouth was another flashlight on his fiction. She thought she was safe here. That made her louder. She started talking about the curtains in the guest wing, how she preferred them open even at night. how she loved the smell of the rosemary bush near the balcony, how she once saw a fox just before dawn drinking from the stone basin near the steps. Details. Intimate ones. The kind you don't share unless you think the place is yours. Or about to be. I stepped back quiet as the gravel under my shoes would allow, and made a note in my phone. She's speaking like a future owner. I forwarded the audio recording to Daniel. His reply came instantly. Got it. She's giving us everything. I didn't text back. I didn't need to. I was already planning the next window. Chloe and Mark stayed for another hour. At one point, she walked through the main wing and paused in front of the photo I'd hung by the staircase, the one of me harvesting grapes in Mendocino, laughing with dirt on my face and a glass in my hand. She looked at it for a long time, not with jealousy, not even with curiosity, with something like confusion, like she wasn't sure if she recognized me or wanted to. I watched her from the hallway mirror. Our eyes never met. But she blinked. She blinked like something inside her was adjusting. Then she walked past, finished her wine, and left the glass in the sink. Not rinsed, just placed there like punctuation. They left just before sunset, and I waited until the gravel dust settled before walking to the sink. Her lipstick was different this time, more matte, less obvious. I took a photo anyway. Evidence didn't need to scream. It just needed to sit long enough for truth to settle. I washed the glass, reset the chairs, and turned off the patio lights. The villa went quiet again, but not silent. She was still here in gesture and scent, in borrowed phrases and unfinished sentences, and every one of them belonged to me first. Daniel arrived early, parking his truck around the bend so it couldn't be seen from the main road. He wore a faded black t-shirt tool belt, slung low like he actually planned to fix something, and carried a duffel bag that didn't match anything repair-related. I opened the door before he knocked. "You ready?" he asked, voice low, eyes already scanning the space like a soldier returning to familiar terrain. I nodded. We didn't hug. We didn't small talk. He followed me to the study where I had the quiet files folder open and waiting. He dropped the duffel on the floor, unzipped it, and pulled out a matte black tablet. "It's queued up," he said. "You sure you want to see it again?" I didn't answer. I just reached for it. The screen lit up instantly. The video was timestamped Wednesday, 3:14 p.m., guest wing cam 3. The angle was slightly tilted but clear. Chloe entering through the sliding glass door, barefoot, holding 2 smoothies. Mark followed moments later, shirt off his arm, brushing hers too casually. They didn't speak at first. Chloe set the smoothies down and immediately sat on the arm of the couch like it was hers. Mark leaned in. "She thinks I'm in Tucson," he said. Chloe laughed. "She's too trusting." That's when my breath slowed. Daniel paused the video. "There's more," he said, swiping to the next clip. Thursday, 10:42 a.m. Master wing hallway cam. Chloe again, this time in my robe. The one with my initials DRC monogrammed on the sleeve. She walked past the camera, humming. Mark followed, holding a plate of breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and avocado. "You're getting good at this," she said off-screen. "She trained me," he joked, and they both laughed. I froze the frame. They're zoomed in. My robe, my hallway, my plate, my damn silver toast rack. I sent the frame to my email with the subject line, "Video evidence, monogram/interior confirmed." Then I looked at Daniel. "What else do you have?" He reached back into the duffel and pulled out a second tablet, syncing it to the camera outside the guest balcony. Caught them here, too. She had a key. A key, I repeated. He nodded. Watched her unlock it herself. Physical key. Not the code. I blinked. I'd never given Mark a physical spare. That meant he'd made a copy, or lied about losing the original. Either way, it meant intent. Daniel tapped play again. Friday, 8th, 19 p.m. Balcony. Cam. Chloe stepped onto the balcony with a wine bottle tucked under one arm, same white dress hair up in a messy knot. She stood there for a moment alone, sipping straight from the bottle, then whispered something. The mic barely caught it, but Daniel had added captions. I'd paint the walls darker. That blue's too cold. I stared at the words, then at the fabric of my life unraveling through her opinions. She's planning decor changes now, I said, almost laughing. She thinks it's a blank slate. Daniel didn't smile. She doesn't know it's a monument. I met his eyes. We didn't say anything else for a while. The videos kept looping silently, Chloe rearranging the patio chairs, Mark lighting candles, them standing too close in my kitchen laughing like they were rehearsing domesticity. They weren't just using the villa, they were trying to inhabit me. I closed the tablet slowly. Do we have the clip where she says she thought I was out of the picture? Daniel nodded. Pulled it last week. Want it now, I did. I needed it all. He played it Saturday, 11:03 a.m. Driveway cam. Chloe speaking to someone on speakerphone pacing barefoot. No, she's barely ever here. Mark said she's working herself into the ground. Honestly, I think she's easing out. This place has his energy now. I inhaled sharply. His energy. Like he was the architect, the soul. I gritted my teeth. She's not dumb, Daniel said. Just deeply misinformed. That makes her dangerous, I replied. It makes him worse. Daniel pulled out a flash drive. Everything's on here. Labeled. Time-coded. I backed it up to the cloud too. Good. I tucked the flash drive into the quiet files folder between the deed and the printed stills. The folder was now thick, too thick for someone to claim ignorance. Are you still okay with Sunday? I asked. He nodded. I'll set up the cameras in the guest wing. Motion-triggered discreet. Once they go in, I'll loop them into the display feed in the master suite. Perfect, I said. I walked him to the door. As he left, he paused. You okay? I thought about it. Not angry. Just focused. She really doesn't know. Not yet. She will. Yes, I said. On camera. That night I rewound the video twice just to hear Chloe's voice whisper that line about the walls again. That blue's too cold. I had chosen that shade deliberately soft storm with a hint of slate. It cooled the space in summer, caught the sunrise like a painting. She saw it as void. I saw it as mood. I made a note, motif echo, color as control. Then I poured myself a glass of wine. Not mine, not theirs, just something neutral. And I sat in the living room, eyes on the dimmed hallway, waiting. They weren't stealing the villa, they were misreading it. And they'd learned that a woman who builds from blueprints doesn't burn when someone else scribbles on the walls. Daniel arrived with his sleeves rolled and a quiet grin the kind men wear when they've already won the game but are too polite to say it out loud. We didn't speak as he unpacked the motion-triggered cameras, each the size of a matchbox, matte black heat-responsive synced to his remote monitor. He installed them in the guest wing, 2 in the entry, one angled above the bed and a final one fixed in the hallway ceiling vent, catching both the closet and bathroom doors in a single shot. Test them, he said. I watched the live feed on his tablet. Crisp, silent, unmistakable. Chloe wouldn't see them. Mark wouldn't even notice. The morning light streamed through the villa's eastern windows, coating the wood floors in warmth. It felt like a lullaby, which made it perfect. "We'll trigger the interior feed from the master suite," Daniel said, pointing to the wall screen. "Once they're inside and in motion, give it 10 seconds, then activate. You'll be waiting in the closet. I'll loop Chloe's audio from last week over the hallway speaker just loud enough to rattle him." "He'll think it's playback error," I asked. "He'll think he got caught in a glitch," Daniel replied. I looked at him. "This isn't your first setup." He shrugged. "People lie." "I record." That was enough. We rehearsed the sequence twice. Then I changed into the robe he used to call my power costume, deep navy silk ankle-length subtle embroidery near the cuffs. I wore it barefoot. No jewelry, just clarity. The villa was quiet. Still. A perfect stage. At 1:14 p.m., Mark texted. "On the way. Got the wine?" "She brought dessert, LOL." I didn't reply. Instead, I handed Daniel a copy of the deed paper-clipped with the guest wing video stills, Chloe in my robe, Mark in my kitchen. When they're both in the room, I said, "Hand it to him." "Don't say a word." "Got it," he said. "And again, if he tries to talk his way out, don't answer. Just press play." He nodded. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a spare phone. "Extra feed control, just in case." I took it, slid it into the drawer inside the closet where I'd be waiting. Then I stepped into the space-soft carpet underfoot, cedar scent rising from the shelves. I left the door slightly ajar. I could see the bed, the far window, the door frame. Nothing else. My heart was slow. Even. Not revenge. Not performance. Just truth served livahoasat. At 1:01 p.m., I heard the door open. Laughter. Chloe's voice first. "Is she seriously never here, Mark? I told you. She's always somewhere else. This is ours now." A soft thud, probably her bag hitting the floor. Footsteps into the hallway, then the unmistakable sound of wine being uncorked. The guest wing camera lit green. I counted to 10. Daniel's signal blinked twice. Feed activated. From the closet, I could hear the faint buzz as the master screen came to life. Chloe spoke again. "Wait, is that me? That's my voice." Mark paused. "What the hell?" Chloe again. "Mark. Why am I hearing myself?" Silence. Then Daniel's voice from the hall. "She left you this." A pause. Paper. Unfolding. Mark again. "This is the deed." Chloe. "What?" Her voice thinner now. "Mark. She owns it. Solely. Since 2018. Chloe. "You said Mark, she must have..." Daniel cut in. "Everything you said is on video. You're standing in her bedroom." Silence. Then steps fast. The guest room door burst open. I stepped out of the closet. Chloe gasped, one hand over her mouth. Mark blinked like he'd forgotten my face. I said nothing. I just held up the second phone and pressed play. Her voice. On loop. She's easing out. This place has his energy now. Then a beat. I'd paint the walls darker. That blue's too cold. Chloe turned pale. Mark stepped forward. "Dana, this isn't yours?" I asked. "It never was." I handed him the folder. Book 203, page 14, filed March 11th. Sole owner Dana Renee Collins. He didn't reach for it. He stared at it like it burned. "You went through all this? Why?" he asked. Because you forgot who signed the checks, I said. Chloe stepped back, eyes darting between us. I didn't know she whispered. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned to Daniel. Please escort them out. Gladly, he said. He moved toward them with the calm of a man used to cleanup. Mark opened his mouth again. I raised a hand. You've already said enough. Every word was captured. Every motion recorded. This isn't a confrontation. It's documentation. Mark stood still, then looked at Chloe. She blinked hard. Where do we go? She asked him, voice small. Not here, I said. Not anymore. Daniel opened the front door. Neither of them resisted. They stepped out like guests overstaying a dinner party, not lovers, caught trespassing. When the door closed, I exhaled. Then I walked through the villa, slowly touching the backs of chairs, the edge of the counter. The door frames, each item suddenly quiet again. I walked back to the closet and picked up the extra phone. Deleted the file. Not because I needed to erase it, because I'd already lived it. I closed the guest wing doors, locked them, and slid the bolts shut. Then I poured myself a glass of real wine, my wine, and sat on the patio. The rosemary bush swayed gently untouched. The house wasn't angry. She was clean again. And she knew who belonged inside her walls. They didn't leave right away. Mark lingered just outside the threshold, Chloe a half step behind him, her arms folded tightly, fingers clawed against her own elbows, like she could press herself out of this reality. I watched them through the beveled glass, their figures warped by design. Daniel stood just inside, arms crossed, one foot braced against the door. He didn't have to say anything. The house had already spoken, but Chloe moved first. She stepped back and not bold, not frantic, but shaken like a woman who had fallen out of a script she thought she had memorized. I didn't know, she said again, her voice cracking on the edge of the sentence. He said it was his. He said it was yours before, but that now... Stop, I said quietly. She blinked, lips trembling. I wouldn't have come here if I thought you were here, I said, because you wanted to be. Not because you were lied to. That's not how people fall into villas wearing other women's robes. Her eyes widened at that, flicking toward Mark, who had the decency to flinch. You told me it was yours, she said to him, voice rising. You said she was out working too much, traveling, emotionally checked out. She is, he snapped. She was. This isn't how it looks. Then explain it. I said, folding my arms, not because I needed the truth. I already owned that, but because I wanted to watch him fail in front of her. Tell us both how you had justified lying about ownership, breaking entry codes, duplicating keys. Chloe's head turned sharply. Wait, duplicate keys? You didn't know that either. I asked, eyebrows raised. He told me he had a spare from before. I never gave him one. I said. I checked the access log. He used a copied key last Thursday. At 10:42 a.m. Chloe stepped back like she'd been struck. You're unbelievable, she said to Mark. You said this was your place, that I was safe here. You are, he said, reaching for her, but she recoiled. You had me walking barefoot through someone else's home like it was mine, she hissed. You made me a fool. No, he said, desperate now. I made it real. For us. I was going to tell her. I just didn't. You weren't going to do anything, I said, stepping forward. You were going to keep layering lies until the foundation cracked, but I beat you to the wrecking ball. Chloe turned to me, eyes brimming. I wasn't trying to replace you. I didn't know I was stepping into something stolen. I nodded slowly. You didn't steal it. But you danced barefoot through the crime scene and called it romance. Her shoulders slumped. The robe she wore, her own this time, not mine, sagged like it was too heavy now. He told me he was stuck, that you were cold, that this house felt dead without me. I smiled, then just a flicker. Funny. He used to say I gave it too much warmth, said it overwhelmed him. She laughed bitterly. So we're both props in his play. Not anymore, I said. The curtain's closed. Mark finally snapped. Oh, come on, what is this? A courtroom, you staged this. All of it. No, I said, stepping into the center of the room. I revealed it. I walked to the table and picked up the quiet folder, flipping it open to the guest wing photo, Chloe in my robe, Mark holding a wine glass. You turned a sanctuary into a stage set, and now you're angry the lights are on. You were never here, he shouted. You buried yourself in projects and wine labels and legacy. You forgot how to be a wife. No, I said calmly. I remembered how to be an owner. Chloe gasped. It wasn't dramatic. It was small, guttural. She looked at Mark like she didn't recognize him anymore. You told me she was letting go, that the villa was yours in spirit. Spirit doesn't sign deeds, I said. Spirit doesn't pay the mortgage or commission architects. Spirit doesn't win court hearings if this escalates. Mark looked cornered now, pacing toward the window. You can't make me the villain. We were both drifting. You let this space come between us. No, I said. You hid in its shadows and told another woman she belonged in my place. He turned then face hard. You're punishing me because I needed something you stopped giving. Respect, I asked. Transparency. Legal access. Chloe sat down slowly on the edge of the bench like her knees had given out. I can't believe I let you use me, she whispered. Mark turned to her. I didn't use you. I needed you. No, she said. You needed a mirror. You needed someone to reflect your better self. But you handed me a lie and called it a home. I almost thanked her. She had said it better than I could. I handed her the folder page flipped to the time-stamped footage. Keep it, I said. You'll need it if you ever wonder how much of this was real. She looked up, eyes shining. Why would you give me that? Because he'll rewrite it tomorrow, I said. Might as well leave you with a first draft that's true. Mark stood motionless now, caught in a still frame of his own unraveling. I turned to Daniel. Will you see them out? He nodded. Chloe stood. I'll go alone. Mark moved to follow. She stopped him with a look. Don't. I need to walk away from this on my own 2 feet. And she did. No slippers. No bag. Just a quiet exit through the same door she once believed led to a shared life. Mark looked at me like he was searching for the version of me who used to answer his late-night calls, who once believed a second mortgage was a sign of commitment. I wasn't there anymore. Just Dana. Just the name on the deed. He didn't speak again. Daniel followed him silently, doors closing behind them like the last page of a book no one wanted to finish. I stood alone in the guest wing, the scent of Chloe's lotion still faint in the air, but it didn't cling. Not anymore. Truth doesn't leave stains, it clears them. The eviction notice wasn't dramatic. It was printed on smooth white paper, standard legal font, signed and time-stamped by a neutral third party, no courtroom, no drawn-out process, just a line drawn with finality, and my name printed clean at the bottom. Daniel delivered it. He didn't have to say much. Mark wasn't home when it arrived. That was the irony. He'd spent so long playing house in mine, and now the house had moved on without telling him. The locks had already been changed, high-security keypads installed by a team I'd scheduled weeks ago. Each entry point reprogrammed. The gate accepted only my fingerprint and Daniel's backup code. Mark's car was still registered with the property system, so the moment he pulled up, I saw it. The alert pinged my phone at 10:03 a.m., sharp. I didn't get up. I was already seated in the kitchen sipping coffee, the deed open beside my cup like a breakfast companion. Through the large window, I watched him hesitate at the front gate, the system denying access twice before he pulled out his phone and tried calling. I let it ring, then sent him a text. "Please, check your mailbox." He walked stiffly to the side gate, opened the locked box Daniel had retrofitted, and pulled out the envelope. I watched him read it. He didn't finish. He looked up, eyes scanning the windows like he could still find the version of me that used to wave. She wasn't there. When he rang the bell, I let it echo once before speaking through the intercom. "You no longer have access to this property. Legal notice served. Deed on file. All belongings will be delivered to the storage unit listed in your paperwork." "You're really doing this," he said, voice strained. Not angry, more bewildered than anything. Like he truly believed he could slide his way out with a joke or a line. "I'm enforcing what was never yours," I said. "You chose to act like you lived here. Now you can act like someone who doesn't. I have things, they're already boxed. Nothing personal was destroyed. You'll find the wine you bought, the shirts you left, and the lies you planted folded neatly." He stepped back, then running a hand through his hair. "You didn't have to do it like this. There wasn't another way," I said, "because you never gave me the truth when I asked for it. So now you get it delivered." The gate shut automatically after he stepped off the property. I watched him stand there for a full minute, hands at his sides, looking at the villa like it might open if he said the right thing. Then he turned and walked to his car. The house stayed silent. It didn't miss him. Later that day, I walked through each room, unlocking windows, letting fresh air through the halls. I removed every item he had touched, replaced the guest wing's rug, steam-cleaned the couch, washed the walls with vinegar and water like I was scrubbing someone else's fingerprints off my life. The monogrammed robe went into the donation pile. I didn't need to reclaim symbols. I had the original. That evening, I received a final message from Chloe. It was short. "Thank you for letting me see him clearly. I won't come back." I didn't reply. She wasn't the enemy, just a mirror reflecting how deeply Mark relied on his own performance. He didn't believe in ownership, he believed in access. And I had revoked it. Daniel returned later that week with the final USB drive labeled sealed, archived. "In case you ever need to prove what happened," he said. "I don't," I told him. "But I'll keep it anyway, for the record." We sat outside on the patio. I poured 2 glasses from my favorite vintage one that had never touched his hands, never been part of his little charade. We clinked glasses without ceremony. "You handled it clean," Daniel said. "No cops, no lawyers, just the truth in paper and video." "It's the house," I said. "She wouldn't allow mess." He smiled. "You always talk about it like she's alive." "She is," I said. "She just needed to be reminded of who built her." The next morning I went to the villa alone. No calls, no surveillance, no visitors. I walked barefoot through the guest wing, clean now, aired out, reset. I placed fresh flowers in the hallway. Then I went to the master suite and opened the large glass doors, letting the morning breeze sweep through. The blue walls caught the light perfectly. Not too cold, just as I intended. Some people inherit homes. Others invade them, but the ones who build them never forget what's load-bearing, and now neither will he. The villa is quiet now, but not empty. It breathes differently, like a house that has finally exhaled after holding its walls too tight for too long. I walk through the foyer barefoot, the polished stone cool beneath my feet, the morning sun trailing soft golden fingers across the floor. Outside, the rosemary bush leans gently under the weight of dew. The blue of the walls calm and clean, untouched by intrusion. I hold the keys in my palm, not clenched, not flaunted, just resting there solid and honest. They're new. Not because I needed new locks, but because I needed new memory. The keys are lighter than I remember, but they carry more. I walk past the guest wing without slowing. No ghosts linger there. I scrubbed the story from the walls, not to forget it, but to name it properly. This is not a home where things were stolen. This is a home where clarity returned. The scent of fresh bread curls from the open kitchen. I've baked again. Something simple rosemary focaccia laced with sea salt, and the kind of patience that only grows after you've stopped defending yourself. I let the bread cool beside the window where the breeze cuts gently through the hallway. There's no soundtrack playing today, no staged playlist, just silence and birdsong, both unafraid. I walk out to the patio, holding my coffee in one hand and a folded linen napkin in the other. I set them down and take the chair Chloe once claimed like a throne, the one that never really suited her. It fits now, because I'm not reacting, I'm residing. People think claiming space is about speaking louder, holding ground, putting up walls. It's not. It's about never having to prove you belong. I sip slowly. My phone buzzes once. Daniel. Security audit complete. No motion detected. You're clear. I reply. Thank you. We're good now. We. Me and this house. Me and this stillness. I glance toward the upstairs balcony. It shines now. No more second-hand lipstick stains, no misplaced wine bottles. I let light into every room this morning, not out of ritual, but as declaration. This is my rhythm now. The vines along the far fence are blooming again. Purple flowers stretching up like they trust the sun to return. I sit still. I do nothing urgent. Because peace is not the reward for conflict, it's the recovery of intention. This villa was always that for me. A blueprint turned body. A space that mirrored what I wanted most: continuity, detail, elegance without explanation. And now it is finally aligned. Mark hasn't reached out again. He won't. Daniel tells me he's vacated the storage unit, took only the boxes labeled personal, left the rest. I haven't opened them. I won't. Whatever was his has exited this structure. Chloe never returned. Her silence was the most honest thing she gave me. I'm grateful. I don't hate them. I don't hold their names like sharp things anymore. They're just part of the blueprint now, scars under fresh paint. I hear the wind shift and look up. A single leaf spins through the air before landing softly at my feet. I don't move. I let it rest there like punctuation. The rosemary bush nods. The house says nothing. It doesn't need to, because when you build something brick by brick, you don't fear who walks in. You remember where every wall stands, and you always hold the key.